everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Ashley and I like to talk about books, and today I'm going to be talking about all the books I read in the month of July. So I read 19 books in the month of July. It was a crazy reading month. I knew it was going to be though because we had the reading rush going on, so I already knew that week alone I was going to read a ton, and I already just had scheduled a lot in for July, so I was anticipating reading a lot. I will try to go through this quickly so that we don't spend hours and hours talking about everything I read this month, and I have a couple reading vlogs posted throughout the month, so we'll be able to skim through those a little quicker as well. So I'll start with all the books I read for the reading rush. I have daily vlogs posted for the reading rush so you can see me read each of these books, but to just quickly hit on the highlights of what I read during the reading rush week. I read Elevation by Stephen King and gave it 3 stars. I read Heartberries by Terese Mailhot and decided to leave it without a rating. I read My Sister the Serial Killer by Oyinkan Braithwaite and gave this 5 stars. I read The House on Mango Street by Sandra Cisneros and gave this 3 stars. I read Her Body and Other Parties by Carmen Machado and gave this 3 stars. The Honey Don't List by Christina also 3 stars. And Death in Her Hands by Ottessa Moshfegh, also 3 stars. So most of the books I read that week were just okay. One was phenomenal, and one I read too quickly and just didn't get the chance to really soak it up enough. I did this on audiobook, and it is a fairly experimental memoir that is written in a very unique way, and so I just feel like I missed a lot and need to read it again before I could give it an actual rating. I also did a reading vlog this month where I read 3 horror books, so you can go watch that to see what I think about all of these 3 books. To hit the quick highlights, I read The Troop by Nick Cutter and I gave this 3 stars. The Cabin at the End of the World by Paul Tremblay, I think I gave it 4 stars in that vlog, but since I've bumped it up to 5 stars. And The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. I found a lot of problems with this book and I don't think I rated it, but I ended up giving it a 2 star now, reflecting back. So if you want to hear more about any of these books that I just mentioned, you can go check out my Reading Rush vlogs or my Reading Horror Books for a Week vlog. I will link those both down below and up above, and then you can see what I thought about these in more depth. So that leaves 9 books that I read. I will start with the thrillers. So I read The Swap by Robyn Harding, and this was my first Robyn Harding book. I've kind of heard a little bit about her writing and got a sense of what type of thrillers I could expect her to be writing, things that are more domestic and not generally things that I'm going to love, but that I enjoy reading and flipping through really quickly every now and then. That's exactly what The Swap was for me. I give it 3 stars. This is a story that is marketed as a couples swapping thing that happens. So there's these 2 couples, one crazy night, they decide to swap partners, and from there things go awry. That is a little bit misleading of a synopsis because actually a lot of this book focuses on this teenage character who ends up in this mix, who is not part of either of the couples and becomes obsessed with one of the women and really starts manipulating a lot of the situation. She is mentioned in the synopsis, but just from what I heard people talking about this book, that seems to be glossed over. It just seems to be when people say what this is, they give a 1 sentence really quick, it's about a couple swap at a party, things go crazy. And there's a lot more that's really happening in here, and it takes a while to get to the couple swap thing, and then it's not as straightforward as it might seem from just that sentence of an explanation. So I did enjoy reading this. I read it really, really quickly. It's not that long and it's very fast paced and juicy, but it is a little difficult because a lot of the characters suck, and so you aren't rooting for anyone really. I don't know, I just wasn't blown away by the writing or the storytelling or any grand themes. It was just okay, it was fun to read, definitely a good summer read out on the beach or whatever, if you just want to flip through some juicy drama. If you like writers like Liane Moriarty or maybe Shari Lapena. I haven't actually read anything by Shari Lapena, but that's how I hear her stuff described as well. Then I think that you would enjoy this. Then I read Pretty Things by Janelle Brown. So I was really excited when this book was coming out because I read Watch Me Disappear by Janelle Brown. I have that right here. And this is one of my all-time favorite books to this day. I just really, really, really loved the story. And it wasn't a thriller, it was more literary. So when I saw she was coming out with a more thrillery book, I was pretty pumped. But this is also pretty literary, so don't get too excited if you're like not into literary fiction, but just straight thrillers, because this is pretty much like a literary thriller. So Pretty Things is a story that follows two women. One of them is a con artist and one of them is an influencer. And the con artist is in a situation where she needs money quickly. And she grew up with this influencer girl, like she knew her from her summers before. And then this girl turned into a famous influencer and she knows her family's got a lot of money. So the con artist is in need of money quickly. And so she decides that she's going to pull a big con on this influencer who doesn't necessarily remember her from her childhood because the con artist was more friends with her brother. So she goes under a fake identity and like tries to spend the summer conning her out of getting that money. So it was juicy. And I also just think it was really, really, really well written. I just really like Janelle Brown's writing and her tone and just how she builds setting and complex characters. I just enjoy Janelle Brown's writing in general. So I had a pretty good chance of liking this, and I did. I ended up giving it 4 stars. A couple things to know before going into this book is it is more dense and more slow writing. So this is definitely not a quick flip through, like really short chapters, super fast paced, plot twist on every other page thriller. It's not that type of book. It is definitely more like slow building, complex, dense, takes a while to figure out what's going on, kind of drawn out. And I personally enjoy those kind of books, but I know not everybody does. So just like to put that little warning there. Another thing that was a little bit, it made me a little bit hesitant when I started reading this book is it's a dual perspective narrative. There might actually be more than 2 perspectives, honestly. It's kind of been a while. I think it might just be 2. Anyway, it flips perspectives throughout the narrative. And every time you're flipping perspectives, you see the same scenes twice. So instead of it just like picking the story back up every time it's flipping, it will like go back and redo that scene from the other person's perspective. So at first I was like, oh, I don't know if that's necessary. Like that's kind of making the story longer than it needs to be. But then once I kind of figured out what was going on, it's really interesting that you get to see like basically without spoilers, like all these characters are kind of playing each other and like, is anybody telling the truth? I don't know. So it's like cool to see one scene from multiple people's perspectives when there are different like interpretations happening or like different motives behind why characters are acting certain ways. So I actually really ended up appreciating that. But like for the first, third of the book, I was like, do we really need to be retelling every scene? But then it turns out cool. So just things to be aware of going in that made me a little hesitant, but then I really ended up liking this. I think I said I gave this 4 stars, but really I gave this 5 stars. And then for the last of my thrillers, I read He Started It by Samantha Downing. So I actually haven't read My Lovely Wife, the first book that came out from Samantha Downing, I think in 2019. I know everyone was talking about it and hyping up it a lot, but I just never got around to reading that one. So I definitely wanted to read He Started It when it came out this year because I just wanted to jump in and like see what this author's all about. Like, why is everybody loving her stuff so much? Holy cow, this was really good. So this is a story about a family that's going on a road trip, and I'm not sure actually how much is revealed in the synopsis, so I don't want to give too much away, but basically, it's this group of siblings and some of their significant others, and they're just set on this road trip to go get their inheritance after their grandfather passes away. This is another book where like all the characters kind of suck, and that could turn some people away from a book like this, but I found it really interesting to get to know all of these characters and figuring out what was going on. There's like flashbacks to the past when they have done this road trip before, and so you're learning what went on in that road trip, and there's also just some clever things in the writing in here that really trick you in the end. So I really enjoyed this. I gave this one 5 stars as well, which is pretty rare for me to give multiple thrillers 5 stars in a month because I don't know, thrillers just really gotta do something to blow me away, and like this was really good. So I definitely will be going back to read My Lovely Wife now that I read this because I definitely can see what all the hype would have been about with that book, seeing just how well written this one was, and I'm excited to see what Samantha Downing does in the future. Then I read another horror book this week outside of the whole like reading horror books for a week vlog that I did. I read Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno-Garcia. This was one of my most anticipated books of 2020, so I was super excited to finally get around to it and also a little bit scared scared because I didn't want it to let me down. Because I've seen a lot of people saying that this book is really slow in the first half and it took them a long time to get into it and they just didn't know if they loved it. I've just seen a lot of not great reviews for this, which is really upsetting because I was like really excited for it. And then I thought, oh no, like not another book letting me down and breaking my heart. But good news, it didn't. I gave this 4 stars. I thought it was really, really well done. To all the people who are saying that it's really slow in the first half, I just don't know if you've read a Gothic horror book before because I didn't find it slow at all. I thought the pacing was pretty great in this. This is a story about a woman. It's set in the 1950s and she ends up getting like a telegram or a letter or something from her cousin who is saying that her husband is poisoning her. She doesn't know what's happening. She doesn't feel safe in her house. Like, send help. And so then that girl goes to visit her cousin, and when she gets there, the cousin's just like acting like everything's completely fine. The husband and like the whole family that lives in this house are saying, oh, she just had tuberculosis, like she was hallucinating. She's fine. She's healing now. We've got the doctor. He comes every Monday to see her, like whatever. And for a while, the cousin like acts like things are fine, but also isn't. Like, you don't really know what's going on. The house is really creepy. We're building up all these weird characters. Like, I just thought, I mean, that's what Gothic horror does. It like creates the house as a character in itself. So I thought this was really good and really well done. So if you don't like this book, maybe you just don't like Gothic horror. Anywho, I also really liked how this book wrapped up in the end and how it explained everything that was going on. I never know what to expect with Gothic stories or like anything that is hinting to the supernatural. Anytime there's like, oh, there might be ghosts, it's like, okay, is it gonna be ghosts? Is there gonna be a logical explanation? Is it gonna be something in between? Is it gonna be ambiguous? Like, you never really know which direction this is going, and I will not spoil it for you, but I really like the direction that this went and how it wrapped up everything that was going on. But anywho, I talked about this in my day 1 vlog for the reading rush as well. I was just kind of going on a rant as I was cooking lunch that day, talking about how upset I was that people were saying bad things about this book because I think it was so good. And also it's just like great representation to see more and more coming into the horror genre and Gothic horror. Like, just a woman author alone is really exciting for me to see in horror. So it was just upsetting to see poor reviews. But if you're seeing those and you're like interested in this, I would definitely still recommend you pick it up. I gave it 4 stars. I thought it was great. I don't know if people were expecting this to be like plot twists on every other page, like a jump thriller. I don't know what you were expecting, but this is very on par with Gothic horror and I very much enjoyed it. Next up, I read Freshwater by Oyinkan and Misc. This is a book I picked up based off of a recommendation from a list I just saw of books you should read by Black authors, so I just wanted to give it a try. And oh my goodness, the things this book did. This book is kind of hard to explain what's about. It's one of those where you just kind of have to read it yourself and figure out what's going on. I genuinely don't know how to talk about it, so I'll read you the synopsis briefly. But Freshwater tells the story of Ada, an unusual child who is a source of deep concern to her southern Nigerian family. Young Ada is troubled, prone to violent fits, born with one foot on the other side. She begins to develop separate selves within her as she grows into adulthood, and when she travels to America for college, a traumatic event on campus crystallizes the selves into something powerful and potentially dangerous, making her fade into the background of her own mind as these alters, now protective, now hedonistic, move into control. So that might sound like this is about dissociative identity disorder, but it is not. From all the kind of research that I did while reading this and afterwards, as I was just kind of figuring out what was going on in this book and what this meant to the author and why they wrote this. So ended up learning a lot about Igbo culture and the Ogbanji, I believe is how you say that. I'll put the word here. Definitely, I am not an expert. I have just read several articles and interviews with the author to kind of figure out what this was about, but essentially this is just a really culturally significant idea to this author, and it is how they personally identify. And so this was sort of like a autobiographical fiction piece where they fully expressed themselves and kind of told their story, but I assume that some of these are not like exact one-to-one of their life to what goes on with Ada in this book. Overall, it is a pretty short read. It is definitely unique and unlike anything else you will probably read if you do read this. So if you're looking for books that teach you something about something you don't know and you just want to open your mind and learn about something else and someone else's experiences, this is definitely a good place to start. I will say you do need to do some additional reading outside of just this book to kind of figure out what's going on and understand that this is not like a speculative novel. This is not horror. This is not dissociative identity disorder. That's not what's going on here, which may not be apparent to a reader who doesn't understand anything about those other cultural ideas that this book is discussing. Like myself, I didn't know, so that's why I had to go read. But I'll also provide some article resources in the description down below. I'll include an article that I read from Moshfegh that cleared up some things for me, and hopefully that'll help you enjoy this book more if you read it as well. But I did give this 4 stars. Speaking of books that I ended up doing additional reading and research on outside of just the book experience, I read The Deep by River Solomon. This is another recommendation that I just saw on a list of books you have to read by Black authors, and it is really short, so it was a really good quick read. This is a story about mermaids. This story follows Yetu, who is a mermaid whose responsibility is to hold and retain all of the memories of her people. Her people are this mermaid group under the sea that was born and evolved from pregnant African slave women who were thrown off the slave ships. This is actually a story that has been told multiple times before. This sort of, I don't know if folklore is the right word, but this sort of traditional story that has been told of what happened to these pregnant African slave women who were thrown off the ships, and this idea that their babies were actually able to be born and evolved into this mermaid species. So I actually listened to this on audiobook. It is read by David Diggs because it is inspired by the song The Deep by the group Clipping, which David Diggs is part of, and definitely would recommend that you listen to that song as well, either while you read the book, before the book, or after the book. Just make sure you also listen to that song because it is awesome and it tells the same kind of story but with emphasis in different places on certain themes. So where River Solomon decided to go with this version of The Deep is really narrowing in on the idea of collective memory and the weight of intergenerational trauma, which I thought was just really beautifully done. So with Yetu as our main character and her responsibilities to carry all the memories of her people, she is carrying all of the pain and suffering and all the memories of just how this society began in general, and like the very first child that was born, how that ended up creating this whole society and how they've sustained. In this book, she like crumples under the pressure and decides that she just needs to run away, and then she has to contend with what that means to like leave them all to their suffering, because they have this ceremony where she like passes the memories on to the whole group and they have to like deal with it and relive it. And then at the end of that ceremony, she's supposed to take all those memories back and let them go on and live for like a year again, or however long until they do the ceremony again. But during that ceremony, she decides to leave because she can't stand the idea of like holding all of those memories in herself anymore. And then from there, she has to figure out like if she's gonna go back, if she's gonna try to continue living on her own this way, like if she can handle having to, if she can like emotionally handle putting that burden on all of those other people. And it was just really interesting and really beautifully done. Like I said, I ended up reading more on this story and where it originated from, and who were the people that first told the story, and how the group Clipping ended up creating their song of it, and why they focus on different themes, and just everything that's been done on this over the years is just really interesting, and would definitely recommend that you read those resources as well, which I can link below as well, so you can check those out if you're interested. Yeah, I really enjoyed this one. I also gave this 4 stars. Next, I read Head Over Heels by Hannah Ornstein this month. I did this one on audiobook, so I don't actually own a physical copy of it. A lot of people have been talking about it. I know it was a book of the month selection, and I've just seen it going around the internet, so I was interested. I also grew up as a gymnast for most of my life, so it was just really special to me to be able to read a gymnastics story. That was what I loved about it for like the first half of the book so much, was just how specific it was to gymnastics and how much terminology there was, and just like really narrowing in on the experience of what it's like to be a gymnast. I've literally never read a book about gymnastics ever, so that was just really cool in general. To have a book where something that's such a big part of who I am is like represented in a story was just really neat in general. I actually didn't end up liking this story though. I think I'm gonna give it like 2 stars, and part of that may be because I listened to it on an audiobook, so I don't want to judge it too hard because I know that sometimes can alter the experience, and I didn't personally like the narrator's voice, and especially one of the voicings they did for one of the characters was just really annoying to me, so that could have also brought the rating down a little bit. I feel pretty confident in saying that I just didn't like it for a couple reasons. So first off, this is heavily marketed as a romance book. Just look at the cover, there's a couple on it. I mean, it just seems like it's going to be a gushy romance, and I don't even like care about romance a lot, so that's not even something that I'm like upset that it wasn't a romance because I'm just wanting romance. I don't care about stories that say other things because I hardly read romance. Like most of the stories I read have larger themes and have nothing to do with a couple falling in love. But because this one was so heavily marketed towards that, that's just what I was expecting. And then the romance was just not in that book. Like, it was so unromantic. I was so uninvested in the couple. It was just not, as a romance, this book was not that. What it did do was focus a lot on the sexual assault scandals that have been going on in the gymnastics industry over the past several years, and focusing on mental health for gymnasts and how important that is. That I appreciate, and like, I can relate to that, and I am glad there is a book out there that is doing this and addressing this. But it also sort of just felt like unoriginal in that it kind of just seemed like rewriting all the news stories that were going on with Larry Nassar and just kind of swapping out names. So while I do think this is an important topic that needs to be covered, I just don't know if this book did it in an especially great way. And also, it just seemed like it was trying to do too many different things and nothing was done particularly well. Oh, just to give you like the synopsis of what's going on in this story. So I honestly don't remember anyone's names except for Hallie. That's not even the main character. But our main character was a gymnast growing up all her life, and then she got injured and she could no longer be a gymnast, and she's just been like kind of depressed and doesn't feel like she has a path in life because she doesn't get to continue to pursue her dreams in gymnastics and the Olympics and whatnot. So she ends up getting this opportunity to coach gymnastics, and that is what really like awakens her spirit again and gives her a purpose. And then she ends up working with this girl, and from there, like, the whole storyline of the sexual assault stuff going on in the gymnastics industry and the importance of mental health kind of bridge from there. Meanwhile, she also reconnects with an old friend from her gymnastics days, and there's just like a lot going on, and none of it like meshed great in my opinion. Yeah, it just wasn't for me, which is a little disappointing because I was really excited to read the gymnastics part of it, and just a gymnastics book in general, especially for the first like third of the book. I was just sitting there listening to it, getting all the nostalgia, all the feels, but ultimately I just didn't love it. Next up, I read Lumberjanes, Volume 1. This is a graphic novel. It's actually the first graphic novel I have ever read, and I read it through Scribd as an ebook, so that was an interesting experience in itself to read, my first graphic novel, and to do it as an ebook was an interesting choice. But I think as I'm like trying to get into graphic novels, it makes sense for me to do it more on Scribd, where I'm not like spending money purchasing the books and then getting really disappointed and not liking them. I have been wanting to like experiment and see what kind of genres I like in graphic novels and see if I can get into them. I'm just interested in them in general. So I gave this one a shot. It looked really cute. It's about these girls at a camp, and fantastical things happen. This is like a 60 volume series, and I don't know if it's still going on. There's like a lot of books in this series, but I do not think I will be continuing with it. I think it was just like a good trial run for me. It kind of reminds me of Gravity Falls. If you've seen that show, it's kind of those kind of vibes, but I didn't dislike it. I gave it 3 stars, which is just a pretty, good. It was a good story. I'm not upset that I read it, but I just don't think I can commit to a 60 volume series unless I like really loved it. And yeah, it was just kind of fun, but it was cute, and I'm glad that I started to get into graphic novels, and I'm excited to find more that I like. So if you have any recommendations, definitely let me know because I am looking for them. And I have saved the best for last. So this was my absolute favorite book that I read in July. It will stay with me for such a long time, and if I could give it more than a 5 out of 5, I would, and I can because there's no rules in reading, and I give it a 10 out of 5 because that's what I want to do. This is The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. This story was everything I want in a book. It was absolute perfection. I don't think a book could be better than this, and also could a cover be better than this? I don't think so, because that's really pretty. So this is a light fantasy book where in this world there are magical creatures. Magical creatures are not seen as respectable in society. Specifically, this follows a group of magical youth who are unique and like the worst of the worst in terms of magical creatures, and they live in this orphanage, and they're just like secluded away from society at this house at the edge of the sea, like on this island. Nobody sees them. They stay over here. And one day, one of the people who works for the Department of Magical Youth ends up going to visit this orphanage because he's set on an assignment to see like what's going on there, if everything's okay. They're not getting like very detailed reports, and they want to know what's going on. And ultimately that trip can lead to him shutting down the orphanage or just saying like everything's fine. So he goes and he visits. Just to set this up for you, one of the kids that is living here is a 6-year-old boy whose name is Lucy, which is short for Lucifer, aka he is the Antichrist. So lots of funny things going on in this book. It was just so precious, and I really enjoy that trope. This is like so specific, but I love stories where a troubled adult who is just like not 100% in life goes to visit troubled kids who are also not 100%. Like, they've got insecurities, they're seen bad, they have a little bit of magic. Like, specifically when there's a little bit of magic in the story is when I love it the most. And together they just like heal each other. That is my dream story. Like, that is what I love. I don't know if it was like Nanny McPhee as a child that did that to me or what, but I love that story so much. This was the perfect book for me. It reads a little bit young-ish, like sort of like a Lemony Snicket type of tone in a way. This book doesn't take itself fully seriously. You're meant to laugh, you're meant to, you know, have a good time reading it, but also there's like some really serious topics in here that are really touching, and I just love these kids so much with my whole entire heart, and I love Arthur Parnassus with my whole entire heart. I have seen a lot of people raving about it, so I'm probably not the first person to tell you to pick it up. If you haven't picked it up, pick it up. This is one of my favorite books of the year. It's so wonderful. It also reminds me a lot of Nothing to See Here by Kevin Wilson, so if you liked this book, definitely give this one a try. So these were all the books that I read this month. They're not all even gonna fit in the frame, and they're very heavy. My favorites of the month were definitely Pretty Things by Janelle Brown, He Started It by Samantha Downing, Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno-Garcia, The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune, The Cabin at the End of the World by Paul Tremblay, and My Sister the Serial Killer by Oyinkan Braithwaite. I'm gonna put these down now before trauma ensues. Oh. Okay. Oh my. Let me know if you've read any of these books and what you think. Also, let me know what your favorite book was that you read in July, because I'm always looking for more recommendations. If you have any graphic novel recommendations, I'm definitely open to those as well. I just purchased Sheets. I don't know who it's by. I'll just put the image right here, but that one I have to read pretty soon as well. I just thought it was so cute, and I just had to read that. So that one's on my radar. I also have Heartstopper, the series by Alice Oseman, on my list. So anything outside of that, I'm open to any kind of recommendations. But that is all I have for today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.